Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our second The Shark Side webinar series. We will just wait 5 minutes for people to pour in and then we will officially start. But yeah, thank you all for joining. Get comfortable, get yourself a cup of coffee, tea, quick run to the bathroom, and then we'll start in 5 minutes. Okay. We'll officially start. Um, yeah, so thank you guys once again for joining. Today we have Toby Rogers and Melissa Now, both from Shark Spotters. who will be sharing some very cool insights on some of the research and monitoring work we're doing in the Western Cape, and specifically in the Cape Town and Plettenberg region. I will hand over to Mel so that she can introduce herself, and then Toby will introduce himself after that. You can go.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining in today. Very excited to share our work. As Jamila said, my name is Melissa, and I'm the program manager for Plet Shark Spotters. I only started officially working in February, so I'm still quite new, but I have been involved before that. I grew up in Cape Town. I moved to Plettenberg Bay in 2019. While I was living in Cape Town, I did my undergrad in oceanography at CPUT, and now I'm still doing my master's with them. So yeah, the two research projects that I'll be showing you guys today will all be filtering into my master's, and yeah, it's really exciting work. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mel. Toby, you can go on.
Thanks, Jamila. Thanks, Mel. Yeah, so my name is Toby. I'm the research manager here at Shark Spotters. I've been with the organization for a couple of years now. Alongside that, I've also been doing a PhD where I've been studying the movement ecology of bronze whaler sharks, which will be sort of a little bit of the topic of the talk that we run through today. And yeah, super excited for this series and where we get to share with a wider audience a little bit about what we're doing, what we're about, and where we're going. So yeah, I think Jamila, over to you for direction.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, guys. So everyone, just a few house rules. I'm sure everyone's mics are off, everyone's muted. But if you have any questions, be sure to type them down into the chat box, or you can use the poll that's available in the chat as well. How we're structuring it is Mel will do her presentation, and then Toby will follow, and then we'll open it up to the audience after both the presentations for a question and answer session. So I'm going to hand it over to Mel, who will give her presentation. Please share your screen, Mel. And then she will probably speak for 15 minutes. And then we'll have Toby after that, and then we'll have a good 30 minutes for a Q&A. So whatever questions, I think Mel and Toby have all the time in the world to answer. You can take it over, Mel.
Cool. Is this all good? You can see. Okay. Awesome. Introduction done. Let's move on. Okay, so one of the first and oldest research projects that we started in Plet was Robberg observations. So I'm not sure how many of you have been to Plettenberg Bay, but it's almost like this half circle bay, and we have this big mountain going out to sea called Robberg Peninsula, and it almost acts as a harbor wall to the bay. So on the inside here, ooh, okay, that's not going to work, is a very protected area. And then on the other side, on the right-hand side, we call that the wild side. So Robberg is one of the very few places in the world where you can actually see great white sharks specifically, or any large elasmobranchs from land, and you can observe them without interfering in any of their behaviors at all. So what we did from 2019, we hiked out on this mountain. The little location spots are spots along the mountain. These are just like the best and highest vantage points. And over time, it's a bit updated now, it's an ongoing study, but when I did the analysis for this study, we had 157 non-invasive observational surveys over a 3-year period, so January 2020 to 2023. We actually started the project in 2019, but I was just a research assistant for another researcher named Frikkie van der Vijver, and I took over the project for him in 2020. So this accumulated to over 1,445 hours on the mountain. And yeah, as I said before, we sit on cliff-top sites that are averaging at 100 meters above sea level. So we really get an awesome bird's eye view from here. And what we're doing on the mountain is we're just simply sitting for hours with data sheets, recording elasmobranch presence, trying to get to species level if we can, And then we record any behaviors and yeah, just anything that we notice from up there. Sorry, I'm just struggling to click next slide. Okay, can you still see me, Jamila? Sorry.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, cool. I lost myself, but it's fine. Okay, so some of the findings that we found from the study so far, we looked at 4 specific species: the white sharks, the bronze whaler sharks, and hammerhead sharks. And then stingrays, we couldn't always identify to species level, but most of the time we were seeing short-tail stingrays, the big round guys that I'll show you some pictures of later. And findings that we found is that these species have seasonality along the mountain, and sea surface temperature also plays a big role in their presence there. So this is one of the analysis I did with seasons. So, okay, this is actually, sorry, month. We did after this categorize into seasons, but at the bottom you can see 1 to 12, that's January to December. And then almost, it's not abundance, but it's a abundance indice monthly count of sharks sighted. So this can basically show us what time of the year the sharks are mostly present along Robberg. So if we start at the top, bronze whaler sharks, you can see they're quite scattered throughout the year. But in the summer months, particularly November, December, and January, their presence is highest. With the white sharks, we're seeing from January to April, nearly no white sharks at all. And then from May throughout the winter until the end of spring, we have quite a high white shark presence along the mountain. And then again, summer comes, November, December, they disappear from the mountain area. Hammerheads, mostly present during the summer months and absent in the winter. And then stingrays, they didn't really have a significant seasonality at all. They were kind of present throughout the year. And specifically for hammerhead species and bronze whalers, they definitely prefer the warmer water, and that's why we're seeing them more in the summer months. So like I did mention, we are continuing this project. And yeah, we just kind of hope to go into a bit more detail, identify more species to look at. We're going to expand our spotting sites, and this is one of the awesome things about having shark spotters in Plettenberg is that we don't only have eyes on Robberg Mountain itself, but we have eyes now from the mountain all the way across the bay, and this can definitely extend our search area or our research area. Let me play this little video quickly. This is just a video of a white shark being mobbed by some of the seals along Robberg. So this is like a perfect day where the water is crystal clear, and yeah, you can just see how easy it is to spot them from the mountain. And yeah, we'll be looking a bit more into the different behaviors of the sharks and hopefully diversity and abundance. Okay, so next is the BRUV study. We only started this study in January this year. So for those of you that don't know, this little picture on your left is what a BRUV looks like. So essentially, it's what stands for Baited Remote Underwater Video System. On one side, you'll have a bait bag. On the other side, we just use a GoPro. It's a weighted system. You drop it off the side of the boat with a buoy attached, and you leave it underwater for an hour, and you come back, pick it up, and you watch a video and see what you see. So we're obviously focusing on sharks and stingrays for this study. We're going to look at species diversity across the bay, try sex the animals if we can. Are we seeing mostly juveniles or adults? And we have also found some really cool individuals that have unique markings that we've managed to recite so far. So that's a picture of myself and the Orca Foundation volunteers deploying a BRUV off Jacob's Reef. If any of you know, you can see Beacon Isle Hotel in the background there. So this is a picture of our study site. We only have 2 study sites at the moment. The first one being also along the Robberg Peninsula Mountain at a spot called Maderbunk. Historically, it's a very famous spot to spot white sharks from the mountain, but we also were trying to investigate why the white sharks are coming there. This is also a sandy bottom, and it's within a marine protected area. So that's our first site, and then the second site is Jacob's Reef, just in front of the hotel that I showed you in the previous slide. Okay, so it's a very new study, but what we have seen so far is, I think actually from last month we might have reached 14 different species of elasmobranchs. 2 of these include skates, only 1 stingray species, which is actually a bit strange, and the rest of them all shark species, from small sharks to large sharks. Then we've seen over 20 fish species, and we've also had some other visitors on the BRUV, like Cape for seals, jellyfish, crabs, starfish, octopus, and more. So I thought we don't really have much more results besides for these right now, but I thought I'd just share some really cool pictures and videos with you from what we've captured on the BRUV so far. So the first one we have here, you can see very murky water, but there pops a little bronze whaler shark, juvenile. Next one is the short-tailed stingray that I was speaking about earlier. This one's really cool. She's a female, and we've resighted her quite a couple of times because if you carry on watching on her left fin, you'll actually see quite a large triangular notch has been taken out there. So we have been able to resight her, which has been really awesome. She comes a bit closer towards the end here, and you'll be able to see that notch quite nicely. Yeah, there she goes. This one was at Jacob's Reef. Another one from Jacob's Reef. A puff adder shy shark. As you can see, my BRUV doesn't always land straight up. Also another female, and she's got quite a big tummy. Here we have 2 species of cat and shy shark, 1 leopard and 1 pajama. Lots of red Roman and fish life, like you can see at Jacob's Reef, which is really awesome. Here's another video of short-tailed stingrays, but I just had to put this one in because the visibility this day was absolutely beautiful, and we got 2 of them in one video, which was a first. Very healthy reef system over here.
Hey Mal, sorry to just pop in. Are you able to change your presenter mode to a different one? We have a comment in the section that they cannot see the screen properly.
Oh, okay, let me try quickly.
Okay. But beautiful footage, I have to say.
Yeah, I kind of got kicked out of that other thing. Let me just see. Am I in the way? Or what's
yes. Yeah, you're kind of part of the screen. I think especially when there's text right now with the video, it's fine. But when there's text, there's certain text that we're unable to see. So I think if you just, reshare again.
I'm gonna have to stop sharing and share again. I only have like 2 more slides though.
Okay.
But let me just quickly try.
Okay, that's not a problem. Okay, we're gonna have a bit of an ad break. Please, attendees, if you guys have any questions at all for Mal or interested to hear about her, further details on the BRUV deployment in Plettenberg, be sure to ask your questions in the chat section of webinar. And yeah, and then Mal will definitely address them once she's done.
Can you see better now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Cool.
Well,
Thanks.
I'll play this one again because it's my favorite video. Okay, for those who have just joined, these are two short-tailed stingrays along Jacob's Reef that we captured on our BRUVs. Okay, here is the infamous white shark that we get here. Like I showed you from our Robberg observation data, the white sharks usually, sometimes they arrive in April, but more so May, and they stay throughout the winter. This year we had quite a weird year. We weren't seeing any great white sharks from April, May, June, and then in July they started coming in. And from September, we really had a massive jump in sightings in the bay. And yeah, we were very excited to capture some of them on the BRUVs. I think we've only got 3 sightings on the BRUV so far, but we've joined an amazing partnership with the Rock Hopper Fund, and he's given us a whole lot of 360 cameras, and this way we can get really high quality footage that we can hopefully start identifying the sharks through their unique markings on their bodies. Yeah, so here's a juvenile female white shark that came to check out the BRUV. She actually hung out for about 7 minutes, and we had the 360 camera on, so it was really, really special to watch. Okay, I just wanted to say a big thank you to all the partners that have helped in all these projects so far. Orca Foundation, Ocean Blue, my university, Cape Nature, ProDive, and Rock Hopper Fund, and of course Shark Spotters, yeah, for letting me run wild with my research projects. And yeah, that's it from me. Thank you so much.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Mal. Yes, please give her a round of applause. That was wonderful. It was so exciting seeing the footage. We do have a comment. Someone does want to see the wild side of Plet. They just want to see that slide again before we get to you, Toby. And then, yeah, keep the questions coming, everyone. I'm really enjoying the interaction in the comment section. Yeah, we're just gonna go back to that slide.
Okay, the slide.
Yeah, I think that's what you wanted to do. You wanted to screenshot it. Please screenshot it, and then we will let Toby take over. Thank you so much, Mal.
Oh.
Okay. Amazing. There we go. You can share your screen, Toby. Okay, great. Amazing. Whenever you are ready.
Okay, can you guys see? You happy?
Yes, perfect.
Wonderful. So hi everybody. Again, thank you for joining this afternoon. It's very tough when researchers bring nice snazzy underwater videos of all the marine life. It's quite difficult sometimes to compete, but I'll try my best. This afternoon, I'm going to run through a little bit of brief history about tracking animals in general, and then move on to some of the work that I was doing with shark spotters and for my PhD research, where we're sort of tracking shark movement along the South African coastline. So it'll be a history, but a very brief history. We'll go all the way back to early civilization. So humans were very much a tool-oriented species. And from early civilization, we've relied on developing tools and an understanding of how to track animals to use them as a source of food. Primarily, humans have tracked them to find food supplies, but also potentially identify threats to human survival. Now, indigenous cultures, they developed traditional tracking methods, sort of using visual tracking to follow animal footprints, as you can see on the screen, scat, and signs of feeding or movement. So, and again, this is based on a deep understanding and a knowledge gained through understanding local flora, fauna, and animal behavior, which is often passed through generations. Now, as we fast forward a little bit into somewhat of a more scientific era, during the early revolution of early biologists and naturalists, they start to understand that recording this kind of information and using a more systematic approach is important to understand how animals move and what they're really doing. And these early scientific discoveries really sort of provided a baseline to develop new techniques, and things like tagging wildlife sort of started to emerge with early examples all the way back to sort of bird banding and attaching numbered marker tags to animals. If you can cast your minds to cattle industry, they're still using that today, where they have the little ear tags and the numbers on there to conduct things like marker capture experiments. But as technology has developed and become more sophisticated over more recent years, we're able to really utilize some very amazing technological advances in the forms of whether that be radio tracking, ultrasonic tags, or even satellite and GPS tags now. So we can really start to gain a huge understanding of where terrestrial and marine animals are really going to try and aid, certainly for some of the more vulnerable species out there, their conservation and the population management for these species. And many of you may be asking, so Toby, why on earth sharks? And although attitudes are shifting, there remains sort of the narrative that they're a pretty scary species. So let's ignore what we don't like. Why do we care, or why do we need to know about where they go and what they get up to? Alternatively, if you're a parent with a young child, you might even just cringe at the thought of ever hearing one of the jingles about baby sharks. So let's forget about sharks altogether. But on a more serious note, why should we care? So it's important to remember that sharks, they're predators, and they provide very important ecosystem services, and they have important roles within these ecosystems to help maintain balance within them. And just like their fluffier terrestrial counterparts, things like lions or tigers or whatever, sharks are also predators. They hunt living prey, and sometimes it's a little bit gory, but it's sometimes that fear of the unknown that sort of switches people off to the magnificence and the importance of sharks in the ocean. So as apex predators, many shark species are apex predators. They help control population sizes of different prey species and even the behavior of some prey species, which can in turn impact the entire food chain. And their removal can sometimes disrupt these such that it becomes very detrimental to these ecosystems. So importantly, I think it's very much so that humans and sharks, we're coexisting somewhat at the moment. For a large majority of some populations, some human populations around the world, sharks still form an important source of human protein, and we can't sort of just put that aside. They provide a food source. However, in many instances, this is often done unsustainably, and it comes down to trying to find a balance to ensure that sharks are being utilized sustainably, so that they can still provide these important ecosystem services, but also that humans can also utilize them as well. And I think most of us may be fairly aware of some of the key threats, and they're all pretty much human-derived threats that sharks face. We've obviously got overfishing and bycatch in non-targeted fisheries. We've got habitat loss and degradation due to climate change. We've got various sources of pollution and contamination that enter the marine environment. And in some cases, there's even still destructive human-shark conflict strategies in place. So things like destructive shark nets or drum lines that have been utilized for human safety. So there's a wide range of threats that sharks face, but why do we need to track them? I think fundamentally, it's important to identify high-risk areas for both humans and sharks alike. Not necessarily when it becomes to bathing beaches, but whether that be fisheries exposure as well. We must remember that we can't necessarily manage wild populations per se. We've got to manage human behavior and the impacts that humans have on the oceans. And this is where understanding shark movement really comes into play. And where we're trying to find this balance of coexisting effectively between this effective coexistence of sharks and humans. So how do we track animals, or how do we track sharks in South Africa? One of the key methods that we're using is acoustic telemetry. Some people may be familiar with acoustic tagging and tracking of wildlife. Many might be more familiar with these fancy satellite tags that you pop on the dorsal fin of an animal, and it gives you all this snazzy data back. They are indeed quite expensive, and acoustic telemetry provides sort of a middle ground where we can make sure that the sample size is large enough for the shark that we want to study, or the species that we want to study, and also cost effective at the same time. So they come in a wide array of shapes and sizes. And what we're generally doing when we're targeting things like the bronze whaler shark, which I'll bring into in a second, is we catch these animals, we do a small surgery, and we implant this tag into the animal. It's about the size of a AA battery, and that tag will transmit a unique ID code to these little receivers that you can see down here. And it will deploy that timestamp and that ID code as it swims around the ocean, so we can start to get an idea of where these animals are going. And the advantage of acoustic telemetry in South Africa is that we've got quite a wide, expansive receiver network. So these things down here that we can tap into to really try and understand these broad scale movements that a lot of these large predatory sharks are undertaking. So as an example, I pulled up some of the Plettenberg Bay in theme with Mel's talk there as well. So these are the receiver stations that are sitting on the ocean floor in Plettenberg Bay. You can see that there's 4. And over the last sort of 8 years or so, there's been 14 different species of fish or shark under there detected in Plettenberg Bay, and a total of around 160 to 170 different individual animals. And what an interesting sort of fun fact is that over the deployment time, around 40% of that time, an animal has been detected on one of those receivers. And again, you can see sort of coming back from Mel's footage earlier, we're seeing some interesting species and some interesting similarities between the different species that have been tagged and have been detected on these acoustic receivers, and that have also been picked up on Whalers and BRUVs as well. So it's a nice crossover and complementary techniques there as well. So let's get into the bronze whaler. Mel also mentioned that she'd been spotting bronze whaler sharks off Robberg in Plettenberg Bay, and they're also sometimes seen along the coastline there. But they're a very wide-ranging species. So they're typically you'll find them most often in the southern hemisphere, where they're referred to as the bronze whaler shark or the copper shark, or sometimes even the narrow-tooth shark. They are a vulnerable species of shark, where they are commercially harvested in a number of countries. Apparently, they're a fairly good eating shark, and there is a demand certainly in areas in the southern hemisphere for the meat of this shark. So there's a little bit of commercial pressure, and for most species of shark, they are thought to mostly have relatively small population sizes. And the issue with these larger species is that it takes a long time for them to grow. They have fairly few offspring at relatively long intervals between those. So once you start exploiting a population but beyond sustainability, it takes a long time for these populations to rebound. Now, for those of you sort of familiar with bronze whalers, you may know a little bit about them, but I'll sort of go into one of the more primitive techniques that we used to understand the regional movement in South Africa and more broadly in Southern Africa. So to understand ORI tagging, it's a very primitive technique, but it's tried and tested. It's been a program that's been in operation for 35 years. And what it allows us to do is recreational anglers, if they're looking to be a little bit more conservation oriented, they can sign up to this program, and when they capture a fish or shark or anything, they're able to put this little yellow tag in the animal, and that tag has a unique ID code. So what we can do is we can then track, in inverted commas, where this animal is going. So it's from A to B. If it ever gets recaptured by another angler down the line, we've got a very coarse idea of where these animals are going. And during that 35-year period, we actually found some really, really fascinating vast movement patterns of bronze whalers in Southern Africa. We've got cross-border movement between Namibia and Angola. We've got movement between South Africa and Namibia. And we've also got some really interesting patterns appearing within South Africa that have got some element of season attached to it. So what we started to see was that there was individuals moving from the south coast all the way up to the east coast from the summer to the winter. And a number of you may be familiar with the event that happens on the east coast of South Africa during that time of the year, and that of course is the sardine run. And it's been sort of known for a while that bronze whalers they do sort of head up that way, and they've been aggregating off these large bait balls of sardine during the wintertime, where they can indeed try and gorge themselves on this highly abundant prey source. So that sort of sets the scene and gives us a bit of a foundation of what's going on. But bringing in the acoustic telemetry, we're going to race the South African coastal circuit, for lack of a better word, and excuse the cheesy analogy. So all these little dots that you can see along the coastline here, these are those acoustic receiver stations. All the green ones are where bronze whalers were indeed detected, and all the red ones were where they were not. And what we can see is, so over a 5 to 7 year period, there were a total of 73 bronze whalers tagged along the coastline. So it's quite a bit of effort and quite a bit of collaborative work that went into tagging all these animals. And because the tags, they can last for up to 10 years, we can start to capture year-on-year information about where these animals are going. So we're going to start off our little race circuit with 5 sharks that we tagged up in Port St. John's back in 2021, see where they go and who wins the race back to Port St. John's. So hopefully this works, and excuse the the coarseness of it. But what we can see is that these 5 sharks, they start off in Port St. John's up here, and they're gradually detected fairly closely together all along the south coast, where all 4 out of the 5 spend quite a bit of time in De Hoop. 1 goes to False Bay and back, and then we see that 2 individuals make it back up. So that sort of describes what's going on over that sort of year cycle. We can see that there's an annual pattern of south coast and east coast movement. However, it gets a little bit more complex. We can say that the purple shark or the brown shark won the race, but it's not really that informative to the broader conservation of the species and understanding more in depth about their movement patterns, especially when you start lumping all 73 individuals into this little animation. It gets pretty complex and pretty convoluted very quickly as soon as you start adding all those different individuals into that animation there. So what we want to do is we want to start breaking that down into something that's a little bit more digestible. And by digestible, we're going to use some statistical wizardry. I'm not going to bore you too much with the statistics, but we can start to use some generalized additive mixed models where we can compile all our detections of all our different individuals that we've tagged through time. And we can look at the interaction between space and time and start plotting that in these figures here. And what we can actually see is that there's this big yellow pulse here in the middle is showing that during the later months of the year, during the winter time, we can see that there's a big pulse of bronze whalers between sort of coastal zones 10 all the way up to coastal zones 6 or 7 there. And again, this is providing us some really nice complementary evidence to a lot of the, I guess, common knowledge or less formal knowledge earlier, where we're getting this nice quantitative understanding of these guys' movement along the coastline. And we saw that these animals also spent quite a bit of time during the summertime, and Mel was also picking up on that as well when she was seeing bronze whalers during the summertime. We're also seeing a quite a big pulse of bronze whalers along the south coast during the summer. And one of the sort of outputs of the work that we were doing with the ORI tagging, those little yellow tags, seem to indicate that along the south coast there's potential pupping grounds and loose nursery areas for bronze whalers along these sections of coastline, so potentially important habitats. And if we remember that those individuals also spent some time in the De Hoop MPA, we're really looking moving away from the cheesy race analogy and looking at the real race. We obviously live in a data-driven era. The only way that things are going to change is if we have a fundamental knowledge of what these species are up to, what they're doing, and why they're there at certain times of the year. And it needs to come down to this quantitative understanding. So providing acoustic telemetry data to marine managers or to government organizations really helps to build a better picture. We can use lots of other complementary methods, increasingly so now the geneticists, and indeed what Mel is doing with the BRUVs is becoming important to really build these methods together and work towards this common goal to improve the conservation of marine species along the South African coastline. So I'll leave it there, and hopefully you guys enjoyed. I think I babbled a little bit, but I think, Jamila, we can probably open it up for questions for both if people have questions.
Jamila, your mic is off.
Yes, that was wonderful, Toby. Thank you so much. I think everyone, let's also give Toby a round of applause. What a beautiful presentation. I think I'm gonna kind of start this question section. I want to know, how did you get those graphs like to move the way that they do move, Toby? Please let us know, and then I will then focus on the questions that are in the chat.
Lots of time with figuring out code, and yeah, lots of round and round, and eventually it works. Trial and error is your best friend when it comes to working with data, I guess. And you're always learning, so it's always fun to take a deep dive into this information and really pull out something tangible and presentable at the end.
Yeah, it was wonderful just seeing the actual movements on the map as well. Mel, we do have a question for you. Have you had any negative comments about using bait bags for your BRUV? Your mind.
Surprisingly, not too many negative comments. We try to do a lot of social media awareness and public awareness and let people know about our research and what's going on. So I think that handles the most of it. But there has been some curiosity around it. But both spots or both sites that I've chosen, Jacob's Reef and Meadowbank, are also very popular fishing spots. So I don't think my 1 kg of filter is going to make too much of a difference in attracting anything that shouldn't be there already. But no, it's pretty much been smooth sailing.
Okay. We also have a question from David. His question is, does that mean sharks will stay later on in December? But I think, David, if you're comfortable, can we just put your mic on and then maybe you can ask the question directly so that you can explain further. Yeah. In the meantime, let me just find David. David, your mic should be accessible.
Hi, sorry, it's actually Tanya. I'm just using my son's account.
Wow.
I just thought because the sharks have come in later, does it mean they're going to stay later?
I don't think so, but we're going to have to wait and see. Luckily for us, we have a 365 days a year observations on the sharks in the area. So we're going to have to wait and see. But so far, obviously, we had a high number of sightings in September, beginning of October again. But since mid-October, the sightings have actually been decreasing, just as we would have expected. We have had 2 or 3 sightings in November, but they definitely are on the decrease. And my best guess would say no, they're not going to hang around on the inshore areas in December, but no guarantee. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think what we can really see from even from the last few years, these environments are hugely dynamic and they can change quite quickly. I think what Mel says as well with having the shark spotting coverage in Plet now, we have the ability to provide the early warning system, but B, we can also report on those results pretty quickly to the public as well. So yeah, it's twofold, and I think yeah, it's I guess continue to watch the space.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. I hope that answers your question, Tanya. We do have a seal question in the mix, Toby. That's that's directed to you. So Dione says, great presentation. I know that this is off point, but what is the status with the rabbit seals around that side? Guys having visits from the orcas.
Hi, Dione. So I think that with the rabid seals, it's an ongoing situation that's obviously evolving at the moment, and something we're collaborating with the city of Cape Town with, and of course we're part of a broader team to sort of monitor, and yeah, hopefully we can learn more in the coming months. With the killer whales, they were on our doorstep in False Bay within the last week. We saw that there was BRUVs whalers that were taken at Miller's Point, and then a couple of days later there was some serving gills that were taken at Betty's Bay. So it seems to be one of my colleagues, Dr. Alison Town, seems to it's the Halloween effect. They always seem to pop up around Halloween and cause a little bit of chaos.
Great, thanks, Toby. We have another question from Elise. So she says, my partner and I found 2 tiny sharks, maybe shy sharks, on the beach in Fishhook last week. We put them back in the water, but is there something else that we should have done? I think any one of you can answer the question, to be honest.
Yeah, I think as swiftly as you can to get them back in the water and kicking is the best you can do.
Great, thanks, Toby. And then Karen has a question saying, I noticed that the bronze whalers and hammerheads prefer summer in the Western Cape. However, white sharks prefer winter months. Is this an interspecies competition factor or a water temperature factor preference, or both?
I don't think we can put Western Cape into one grouping because as far as I know, usually in False Bay area, the white sharks used to like the summer there, but in Plettenberg Bay, they like the winter. I think that the white sharks do definitely have a predatory influence over the smaller shark species. But yeah, maybe Toby, you can elaborate on the bronzy specifically.
No, I agree. I think there's obviously the finer scale elements or finer spatial scale elements to that and the broader scale. Obviously, the summer inshore spots of False Bay used to peak, and that dropped off in the winter and would contrast to the island. So where they were maybe less visible, but still within False Bay. With the bronzies and the whites, I sort of tend to agree that there could be some elements of competition between these two species. Looking at habitat partitioning in a number of different shark species, it is becoming more and more documented that this could be playing a role. Water temperature is obviously one of those nice things that you can always measure. It's that easy quantifiable metric, and indeed a lot of species of fish and shark, they are dependent on temperature change. But there can be other underlying, or temperature may be the underlying factor that is driving maybe a prey migration or something else like that. So there's a lot of different nuances in there, and it's things that we've tried to study and continuing to understand. And I think it's important, especially in terms of this whole ecosystem perspective of what is going on, that these things need to be accounted for. So nice question.
Great, thanks, Mal and Toby. And then we have another question from Vivian John. So, Toby, you say that bronzies possibly pop up in the South Coast. Tell us about their life cycle, and do the juveniles swim as far as the adults?
We've looked at the ORI tagging information from a lot of the juveniles that were tagged during that 35-year period with those small little yellow tags. And I also was able to acoustically tag quite a few juveniles as well. We can see that they're pretty nomadic in a sense. It's not this traditional view of a shark nursery that you may be familiar with, like the lemon sharks and the mangroves, for example, where they have very, very small home ranges. I think when it comes to these juvenile bronzies, there's a lot of their prey is patchily distributed on the south coast. There's other threats from predators as well. So they're very mobile at an early stage by the looks of it. And from sharks that were tagged in sort of Mossel Bay, we can see that they moved all the way past Jeffreys into Algoa Bay. They didn't necessarily partake in the sardine run per se, but certainly when they're moving into this subadult stage, upwards of sort of around sort of 1.5 meters, these subadults do start heading up to the east coast to hunt the sardines as well. So not as far as the adults. I've had a couple of adults go all the way up to just south of or close to the South Africa-Mozambique border. And we've had some of those sub-adults that were tagged during the ORI program that actually made those vast cross-border movements between South Africa, Namibia, and Angola. So yeah, juveniles sort of loosely concentrated on the south coast, and then the adults disperse more broadly from there.
Great, thanks, Toby. We have a question from Hedwig. You may already have answered this, but do you or other scientists in South Africa also use boat-based observations in your research?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, we do. I mean, in Plettenberg Bay, we partner with some of the boat or whale watching companies here. They write down opportunistic sightings of sharks for us, and we just put it into the database. I know in other areas with the shark cage diving industry, there's a lot of research that goes on from the boats there, Gans Bay, Mossel Bay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those, it's not necessarily the most, I guess, standardized, but these guys, similar to what we're able to do with the shark spotting data, a lot of the boat-based ecotourism ventures, they're out for many days, many more days than a research where a researcher could be at sea. So again, they provide that useful context to what is going on, and there's some important information that we've gained from these boat-based operators.
Great. Thank you both. I think this is for you, Mel, from Taryn. Where is the marine reserve boundary in Plet? She does see a lot of fishing vessels close to the bay. And then for you, Toby, in Falls Bay, we noticed an upping season. There was an increased activity in white sharks. Doesn't seem to be the same here. Seems that when the whites seems that's when the whites move off again. Taryn, if you're happy for me to put the mic on for you to ask the question yourself, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, just so that you can elaborate a bit further. Okay. Your mic should be accessible.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it was just about where the boundary is and the marine reserve boundary in Plet. Maybe you want to answer that first, Mel.
Yeah, sure. So the MPA extends 1 nautical mile around the entirety of the mountain. So within the bay, all the way around the point and onto the wild side. Fortunately, we don't get too many fishing vessels coming into the bay itself. We have a lot of chocker boats or the squid industry and the occasional longliner. But besides from that, yeah, fishing vessels are relatively low. The MPA does state that there's no fishing allowed from boats and no spear fishing allowed, but you are still allowed to fish from land within the marine MPA.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, and then I just, when I was working with Chris many years ago, we noticed around the island, obviously the shark activity, great whites around the Seal Island in False Bay seemed to obviously increase with seal pupping season. But here in Plet, it seems that that sort of time of the year is when the sharks, the great whites, are moving off again. Is there any relevance there, or is it just migratory fishes that they may be after more so than the seal pups, perhaps? Anybody?
Okay, so
Mel, do you want to take it? I can take it.
yeah, go.
Hey, Taryn. Yeah, so it's two, I guess, vastly different environments, and I think there's different dynamics at play. There's an abundance of different prey species that white sharks can potentially target, and I think the seals is obviously one of them. There's a lot of other prey species in Plet as well that they could be targeting. So these different nuances could also play into why they're there those times of the year, maybe.
Okay, great. We do have 2 more minutes, so I think we have 3 more questions left, and then after that, we're not gonna take any more questions. So we have a question from Temi. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Toby, can you give an indication of this fish species and the migration to and fro the Brede River and surrounds? So that is nurseries for the bull shark, maybe, and which seasons, not only bull sharks, but leeries, grunties, and dusky cob. Yeah.
That's a big one. That's, yeah, I think that let's see if we can tick one off. Yeah, so the WIP MPA is sort of off the Brea there. We've had a massive amount of different tagged individuals, acoustically tagged individuals detected. So even if we just quickly cast our minds back to the Brunsies that were tagged up in Port St. John's, they sort of made a beeline straight to De Hoop. And it seems like summertime in that sort of area. We've had a number of different large Teleos species, but also large Elasmobranchs detected in that area. Things like the Brunsies, the hammers, and a number of other things. I think it's something that we can go into if you want to. We can certainly discuss over email. I'm conscious that we're going to take up and run over the time there. But yeah, by all means, send me an email and we can continue to discuss.
Toby, just put your email in the chat so that if anyone else, and Mal as well, if anyone else have other questions, they can see. On that, are you still finding some bronzes going up the Breda River? Yep.
I occasionally I haven't had detections of bronzies up on those Breda receivers. So yeah.
Okay. And then the last question, so it's from Sinovuyo. I don't know if this question was answered or addressed. I just want to know what are some of the challenges you face when using BRUVs and how are the footage and analyzed?
Okay, awesome. So just some of the main challenges I've faced this year with BRUVs so far is that you do rely on vessels to go out to sea, and obviously weather can play a big role in whether or not we're going to launch the boats. And then there's also water visibility to consider and those kind of things. And then secondly, deploying the BRUVs. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, that BRUV is not going to land straight, and sometimes the camera ends up landing in the sand, and then you've just wasted a whole boat trip out to sea and an hour of your footage time. But the more you do it, the more you get used to it, and the more accurate, hopefully, your throwdown is going to be, so that it lands perfectly fine. And analyzing the footage, so we do it manually here. Luckily, I have the assistance of a lot of volunteers in Plet, so we watch the videos. We don't use any software or anything to analyze. We just watch the videos ourselves, lots of eyes on the screen at one time, and then we record species that come into the frame, and then we use what we call max N. So if we see a certain species of shark or stingray, we note it down, and then max N is the maximum number of individuals of that species in the frame at one time. So from this, you can eventually use statistics to get relative abundance of the species in the area as well. So yeah, that's what we do here.
Great. I just realized, Hedwig, I missed your question about the reliability of boat-based observation. Toby, do you want to quickly answer that question and then we can wrap up?
Yep. I think there's pros and cons to every method, and you have to be cognizant of some of the flaws to those survey methods. In the grand scheme of things, they provide important information which would have otherwise gone unknown. There are certain caveats that we are aware of, and that we then describe those caveats in publications. But then we also try and balance that with some survey method as well. So some of our independent research survey effort. It's, I guess, similar to something that you look at from a fisheries perspective, where you've got fishery dependent and fishery independent survey techniques to really try and capture a wide net, pardon the pun, as to what's going on out there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Toby. Thank you so much, Mal. And thank you so much to everyone who has participated in this webinar today for joining us and being so engaging, asking so many questions. I think this was such a lovely, informative session. Both Toby and Mal have shared their email addresses. So if you have any other follow-up questions or keen to collaborate, and please be sure to reach out to them. I want to say also this video is being recorded and it will be available on YouTube. So if you do want to go back and watch it or share it with other people, we shall announce that on our social media. Otherwise, thank you again and do have a wonderful day. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Cheers, guys.